You told IO to call the cops.
While it was happening?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. The last time that it got crazy between us, I really did think I was going to lose my life, and I thought you would do it on accident.
In this text, Mr. Depp, you text Mr. Bettany, let's burn Amber, 3 exclamation points. The next text down, you say, let's her before we her, 3 exclamation points. After you said, let's her before we her, Mr. Depp, you said, I will fuck her burnt afterwards to make sure she's. Did I read that right?
You certainly did, yes.
And you wrote that about the woman who would later become your wife.
Blake Lively has been the target of another misogynistic hate campaign for doing something society hates, speaking out against sexual harassment. The Amber Heard versus Johnny Depp trial, as predicted, has only had negative and detrimental consequences for women who dare to speak out about the abuse they face at the hands of men. People learned all the right tips and strategies to use against women who come out about their abuse, and we're now seeing them use those same tactics used against Blake Lively for telling the truth about Justin Baldoni. I'm bringing up Blake Lively because Amber Heard recently showed support for Blake. She's standing up for other women even though most women abandoned her when she needed support. Every single quote-unquote proof that Amber was the abusive one has been debunked. This video will show some of those debunked lies used against Amber. I say some cuz if I added everything, this video would be hours long, but if you do want to know the whole thing in detail, go check out my playlist.
I want to be with the dog shit. I thought you'd get clean and sober and it would fix a lot of our problems.
I'm never getting clean.
I know.
Why? I really am naive. Because
But I do love you.
But
I do love you.
Bruce is not meant because. Isn't that I drank so much because of you?
Next move, if I don't walk away, or just go out for a little while, it's just gonna be a bloodbath, like like it was on the island, of course.
My family, my friends, everyone around me saw all the bruises and broken blood vessel under my eye, the bruises on my head, the missing chunks of hair, the split lip, the black eye, the swollen nose, all that shit. Because you're stronger. It is not me. It is not me because they heard me, that I'm somehow more responsible. It just means they heard me because I yelled.
Oh, yes, you do, because you wouldn't have used that as a weapon. I was pouring my heart out to you. What do we do? Let me get it. Stab in here. That's what you saw, huh? Now listen to me cry. Anyway, now I can get her. Is that what you think?
Johnny is and has been an alcoholic for years, way before he even met Amber, but people try to make it seem like he drank a lot because Amber somehow made him sad. He drank because he's an alcoholic.
Please, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I remember I lost control of my bladder. I remember the sound my voice was making about this pressure. My family abandoned it. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't get through to him. I couldn't get up. I couldn't get up.
But when he, on that incident when Kelly Sue was accused of hitting on Miss Heard and they went back into the trailer, Mr. Depp performed a cavity search and ostensibly was looking for drugs and felt it acceptable to rip off her nightgown and stick his fingers up her vagina to look for cocaine, thought that maybe she was hiding them there. And again, these incidents often happened in a drug-fueled rage. There was another incident in the Bahamas where when he got angry, he took his fingers and he put them in her vagina and moved her around violently in the closet. Again, an act of sexual violence.
Pray for a deeper spirit. May we feel the pain of others, understand their need, and reach out to all who suffer in any way.
I hope you don't mind me saying this, Johnny, but when Johnny had a court case involving his ex-wife, Amber, and Shane had a long conversation with you, didn't he, and urged you to forgive Amber. Yeah. He just thought it was the best thing to do, because he just believed genuinely in forgiveness. And I'm sure you have by now, haven't you? Of course you have. Of course you have. But yeah, he just wouldn't hold a grudge against anyone. He just wouldn't see the bad in anyone. He just...
Drugs do not make me good.
Once again, I find myself in a place of shame and regret. Of course, I'm sorry. I really don't know why or what happened.
Johnny's awake now. He doesn't remember anything. When I told him he kicked you, he cried.
I f***ed up and went too far in our fight. I'm admittedly too f***ed in the head to spray my rage at the one I love. Never a second has gone by that she didn't look out for me or have her eyes on me to make sure that I was okay. All I had to do was send the monster away and lock him up. We've been happier than ever.
And you just say, baby, please, please, please don't give him on to the monster.
Amber and I have been absolutely perfect for 3 fucking months solid. I've locked my monster child away in a cage deep within, and it has fucking worked.
I will never do it again. I want to get better for you and for me.
I have never met or loved a woman or a thing more. She has the strength of 1,000 men. I, of course, pounded and displayed ugly colors to Amber on recent journey. I am an insane person, and not so fair-headed after too much of the drink.
I know.
Booze, my capacity is too large, and I won't stop. Ugly and sad. Oh, how I love it.
During the heat of the trial, social media was flooded with comments from bots and spam accounts by Depp supporters, spamming posts about the trial with negative comments about Amber to further influencing public narrative.
Okay, I'm watching this interview with Amber Heard's lawyer. She's very articulate, by the way, which is completely in contrast to the way that she was portrayed on social media. And so naturally, you go to check out the comments, and they're all very disparaging. Her 15 minutes, a mountain of evidence, where? Because she lied. My biggest flex is never, ever feeling sorry for Elaine. And they're racking up tons of likes, 16,000, 25,000, 33,000. But when you actually go to click into these profiles, they're all fake. Like, none of these people are real. Zero content. And then you start to realize, like, these are probably bots. So these are bots making comments, and these are bots liking comments. And when you actually click on the profile of the person who posted this video, it's a super pro Johnny Depp fan account, which is probably a bot too. We're being influenced by bots interacting with bots interacting with...
Now let's get into the myth of the perfect victim, a tactic misogynists love to use against women who come forward about abuse. Whenever a woman makes an accusation against a man, people will dig into her past to find anything to use against her to make it seem like she's not a good person, or find something she did in that relationship to somehow try to justify the abuse she faced.
No, that's very wrong. What makes victims look bad is the perfect victim narrative. Because within the perfect victim narrative, unless we end up near or then we're not really victims. That is what makes real victims look bad. We live in a world where the majority of victims of or assault will not come forward about their crimes. And although you can hear so many people going like, oh, anybody can accuse another person of sexual assault. Yeah, anybody can make an accusation, but in order to bring the accusation forward and bring any sort of accountability or even have the case looked at, you need a multitude of proof. A multitude. And the nature of this crime means that majority of the time we have nothing but our word. But then in the rare instance that the victims do have a multitude of proof and bring the case forward, it is still oftentimes dropped. And don't come at me saying like, oh, if the case was dropped, it means that there wasn't enough proof. Because in this case, this girl posted audio recordings of him admitting to her, pictures, videos, everything. It was as clear as day. He had been her for a very long time, and the case was dropped. The moment the case is dropped, immediately society will say that man is innocent. And in criminal law, when you're defending a rape, the first go-to is to claim that the girl was lying. In order to do that, you need to collect out of context audio recordings, photos, anything that you can in order to take that girl's credibility down. And if they're famous, they will buy PR packages to put whatever it is that is discrediting this girl over lots of headlines. That way those victims become examples to others not to come forward. That is what makes real victims look bad.
Abuse, objectively relies on power dynamics and control. So if you're married to a man as powerful as Johnny Depp, which it's inarguable how powerful that man is, especially to a woman like Amber Heard, who was, trying to make her way in Hollywood, you really can't make the argument that Amber was abusive to him. But this doesn't even begin to touch on the very real slander campaign that she faced. It's crazy because most of the guys in Hassan's chat will call themselves leftists, but when it comes to Amber Heard, you were spewing the same bullshit as Daily Wire. You have a very patriarchal concept of what a victim should look like, and Hassan was getting on the stream fueling that idea and that concept.
Amber Heard, after enduring years of abuse, behaved in ways I think most people would disagree with, in ways that were cruel, in ways that I'm sure she regrets. But that's also the case for a surprising amount of domestic abuse victims. We want victims to be completely docile and have a clean slate and be, this quote unquote perfect victim who has never done anything wrong. If you're waiting for that person to support, you're never gonna find them.
You cannot like Amber Heard while still acknowledging that she's a victim. And in fact, if you don't, if instead you retreat to this position that many people view as neutral, which is that they're both bad, that's actually not a neutral position. That helps Johnny Depp because that's the argument that he is trying to make, is my behavior is excused because of her behavior.
Right.
And so when we view both of them as bad, we're ensuring that the cycle of abuse will be perpetuated. And so that's what I would want people to take away from this is you don't have to support them. You don't have to talk about it. You don't have to make it a focal point of your life, but don't look at abusive situations as oh, everybody involved is culpable, because there always is a victim.
In Mr. Depp's 58 years, not a single woman has ever accused him of violence. And nobody in Hollywood or the world had any reason to believe he was an abuser, until Ms. Heard publicly accused him in 2016.
This is not a Me Too situation. There are no Me Toos. Just not me's. Ms. Heard treatment for any of these injuries, are there?
I did not seek medical treatment after Australia, no.
Not for the rape?
No, I did not want to tell anyone.
Not for the cuts?
No.
Not for the injuries to your face?
I didn't need to.
And you testified that you bled as a result of this sexual assault, correct?
That is correct.
All right. And you testified that your forearms were cut?
My forearms and my feet.
And your feet were sliced up?
That's correct.
And you testified you had a bruise across your jaw?
That is correct.
And there is not a single medical record reflecting treatment for any of those injuries, is there, Ms. Heard?
I didn't seek treatment.
And the day after you sustained all these injuries, Dr. David Kipper came to the house in Australia, right?
Well, he came the third day, along with security.
Mr. Depp threw a wine bottle across the room, the hotel room, on one instance in Las Vegas.
Can you remember whether the bottle hit you?
No, it did not.
Did the bottle hit anyone else?
No, it did not.
When he threw it, was it in your direction?
Yes.
Were there other people standing around you?
Yes. There was a big goodbye, crying, a lot of jealous, and don't do this, don't do that. And I never heard from him again after that.
You just used the word jealous. How did that come up?
He's just a jealous man, controlling. Where are you going? Who are you going with? What did you do last night? I had a scratch on my back once that got him very, very angry because he insisted it came from me having sex with a person who wasn't him.
Was it common for him to say things to you about being controlling, to use your words, or being jealous of you?
Yeah, very common.
In these instances, when Mr. Depp became jealous or controlling, did he also become angry?
Yeah, and demanding.
The next video you're about to watch is someone calling out Jason Momoa, one of the so-called friends of Amber Heard who didn't have her back.
Over the course of my time here, one of the things that I have not talked nearly enough about is the general spinelessness and cowardice of men, specifically in relation to Amber Heard versus Johnny Depp. And I think this is no better demonstrated by the actions of one Mr. Jason Momoa. Jason Momoa has largely built his career on being a big, brawny warrior type. And just take a look at some of the roles that he's played. He's Declan Harp in the Netflix series Frontier. He's the blind warrior in Apple TV's C. Plays the character of Duncan Idaho in Dune. Friggin' hell, he's even been Conan the Barbarian, though that film didn't get a massive amount of traction. And of course, most famously, he's been Khal Drogo in Game of Thrones and has been Arthur Curry / Aquaman in DC's extended film universe. And the dude's got a lot of appeal. And breaking away from the usual Hollywood cookie-cutter ideal of what a superhero should look like, he's not blonde. Instead, rocking dark hair, dark eyes, and a darker complexion than the Hollywood machine is used to giving us in a leading man or action star. And until you look into it a little bit further, there's something very appealing about the sort of big kid energy he brings to everything he does. So here's a dude whose almost entire career is predicated on the idea that he's big, strong, muscular, brawny, brave, and ultra-masculine. And I think, like most men, he likes to pride himself on those aspects of his masculinity. Yet, when it comes to the Amber Heard-Johnny Depp trial, his silence was absolutely deafening. With the closest thing to him actually saying something being an entirely spineless liking of both Depp and Heard's post-trial Instagram posts. And in this case, I can say that it's spinelessness and it's cowardice, because Jason Momoa has not been shy about speaking out on stuff that he really cares about previous to this. He famously campaigns against single-use plastic and actually has a bottled water brand, Manalali Water, which is bottled in aluminium cans, to prove it. He protested against the building of the 30-meter telescope on top of Mauna Kea, a holy and spiritual site for native Hawaiians. He spoke passionately to the United Nations about climate change. And he actually backed up Ray Fisher when he levied accusations both against Joss Whedon and against Warner Brothers when he was talking about the working conditions of the Justice League movie. Now, I have heard some people try to suggest that Jason Momoa or Jason Momoa's PR team was trying to save him from bad PR by telling him that he shouldn't speak out about the Johnny Depp Amber Heard case. And that would be a persuasive argument to me were it not for the fact that on his Instagram account, Jason Momoa had absolutely no problem in helping promote the Flash movie to literally say, "Love you, Ezra Miller." Ezra Miller, of course, is as problematic as the day is long. And I'd argue that even if Amber Heard was 100% guilty of the things that she's accused of, which she's not, to be clear, I'd say all of Ezra Miller's crimes are far worse. It's also not like Jason Momoa was some unknown indie actor who's just breaking into the big time and doesn't want to jeopardize that. He was in Game of Thrones, which is one of the biggest televisual cultural events that's ever existed, and he was in Aquaman, which is a $1 billion movie. I'm just saying that if Dolph Lundgren, who's definitely a member of the supporting cast, speaks out more for your co-star than you do, I don't know, I guess it does make me doubt your intestinal fortitude. Contrast this spinelessness with the full-throated defense that Amber Heard has enjoyed from both the director and the co-star of In the Fire, her latest film. Connor Allen and Luca Calvani have both been gushing in their praise, first of all, of her acting abilities, and second of all, of her grace under fire in dealing with being at the center of a misogynistic show. I'm just saying, neither of them needed to be over 6 foot and built like brick houses. And on a final, but related point, why am I still one of the only men talking about this? Like, I know for a fact that I'm not the only bloke who thinks that what happened to Amber Heard is If all of your men really are the strong, brave and principled warriors that you all say you are, where are you? No, as ever, it's women, and mostly women of colour, who are carrying the can on this. And then you have me as one of the few pieces of male representation on this particular subject, and let's be fair, I'm not really saying anything that women haven't already said. When it comes to actually being brave when it matters, just like Jason Momoa, y'all ain't shit. Never forget that according to the High Court of the United Kingdom, Johnny Depp is still a wife beater, a decision that was upheld on appeal by 2 Lord Justices.
No matter how close you think you are to your male friend, at the end of the day, he's still a man. Men only stick up for other men. Even if he knew you were 100% innocent, he won't ever publicly defend you. Another lie that was created against Amber was that she cheated on Johnny. Well, that's been debunked too.
Exposing the lies of Depp versus Heard. As Siri, Part 5. Today's lie. Amber was cheating on Johnny with Elon during their marriage. The truth. Depp and his lawyer submitted the surveillance videos showing Amber getting into elevators.
Why did James Franco visit you on the evening of 5/22/2016? Tell us.
Because he was my friend and he lived next door, quite literally lived next door. And I had frankly exhausted my support network with my usual friends and was happy to welcome as much friendship at that time as I could possibly get.
The video showed him laying his head on your shoulder. Can you describe for the jury what the interaction was, without saying what was said, what the interaction was that led to that?
He, after seeing my face, touched the side of my face and responded to what he saw.
Depp's team then purposefully withheld the timestamps on the footage with Elon Musk to imply she was sleeping around whilst married to Depp. However, this footage was taken after the separation. Elon also confirmed the footage was taken after the separation, and that Depp's team had purposefully removed the timestamps. Ironically, Depp was the one cheating on Amber with a woman named Rochelle throughout their marriage and was projecting. Depp made false allegations about Elon and Amber to deflect his own affair. An argument began when Amber found texts between Rochelle and Depp. The nurse was present to restrain Depp. Amber was lucky the nurse was there given previous violence. Depp denied the affair, but then moments later admitted to it, blaming Amber for his actions. This text was found from Depp to Rochelle asking when he could see her again.
Her therapist's files were kept from the jury, but her lawyers are revealing them tonight.
Her notes represented years of real-time explanations of what was going on.
The judge ruled the notes inadmissible. Hearsay, notes that go back more than a decade.
From the very beginning of my relationship, that were taken by my doctor, who I was reporting the abuse to.
The documents were first revealed on Peacock TV.
She told her therapist Depp her, threw her on the floor. 8 months after that, he a nightgown, threw her on the bed. And in 2013, the therapist's notes say he her against a wall and killed her.
We can change this. Violence against women is not limited to actual physical violence. It is also about how we deal with it and how we talk about it in the media and in our culture. And us taking responsibility for it is what really needs to change. We need to take responsibility for how we talk about these things. It's the only way that people are going to feel comfortable in coming forward, raising their voices, standing up for themselves, is if we change the system at place that keeps them quiet. Speak up. Speak up. Raise your voice. Your voice is the most powerful thing, and we, together, as women standing shoulder to shoulder, cannot and will not any longer accept silence.
One thing that really gets on my nerves is when men try to pull the victim card by saying quote unquote if the roles were reversed blah blah blah. They always try to make it seem like there's this double standard against men, which just isn't true, and frankly, it's the opposite. Men get away with a lot, and here's someone who helps prove my point. For those of you who may not know what she was talking about, Ezra Miller is a man and a famous actor who calls himself non-binary. He's done a lot of terrible things but still gets roles because of, you know, male privilege. That's the thing about calling yourself non-binary. You can't identify your way out of your own privilege, the same way you can't identify your way out of your own oppression. Anyway, moving on.
No one had ever accused Johnny Depp of being...
Yes, they have. Look up Johnny Depp's old security guard, Ellen Bark and Jennifer Grey. So many people accuse him of being abusive. But go, keep lying.
Till this day, it still blows my mind that people genuinely believed that. It's been debunked several times.
All those who say they could never end up in an abusive relationship because of their anger issues, I want you to know you would be Amber Heard. You would get Amber Heard. See, realistically, you would probably retaliate or react negatively to their abuse, leading to, get this, reactionary abuse. See, you know you wouldn't be the victim there. You're simply responding or reacting to what your abuser is doing to you. But because you won't fit the mold of what the perfect victim is in our brains, we won't believe you. In fact, folks will decide that you are not only not the victim, you're the aggressor. You're the problem. Best case scenario, people will be like, oh, they're both toxic. Oh, they both suck. But worst case scenario, you're demonized for your own abuse. Now, whether or not you believe this is what actually happened to Amber Heard aside, keep just how that trial went down and how people talked about her in your pockets when talking that talk.
Amber Heard has recently come out with new abuse allegations, making it the third time.
No, she hasn't. That is just not true.
What actually happened is that Depp superfans were desperate to find some dirt on Amber Heard, so they put in a records request with the Virginia court where the 2022 trial was held for her therapist's notes. Those notes were public record because they were subpoenaed as part of the 2022 trial. And according to those notes, on a couple of occasions, Amber spoke with her therapist about instances in which the director of Aquaman 2 and Jason Momoa were less than kind to her, which is, as we know, not the same thing as making a public accusation against somebody. Despite this being a false story, thousands of people in that guy's comments are believing it without question, just like they believed every other lie about her that was said on this app. The only victim of false allegations within this whole saga has been Amber. And maybe start fact-checking instead of just believing everything you hear on this app.
Next, I want to talk about Johnny Depp's attorney, Camille Vasquez, showing the manipulative and sadistic things she did to Amber during the trial.
Their approach. All right. I'm going to ask you to take a look. Michelle, can you bring up Defendant's Exhibit 176? So next bill was in May of 2013. Did there come a time that you wrote an email?
Objection, leading and hearsay, Your Honor. May we approach? All right.
I'm going to ask you to take a look. Michelle, can you bring up Defendant's Exhibit 176?
I think this trial had a lot of examples of that. I mean, everything from Johnny using his sense of humor and showing everyone his legal knowledge. You know, he would object to questions before we would, or, you know, he would say, oh gosh, what I'm about to say is that must be hearsay. I mean, there were some really funny moments. There were some interesting witnesses, not to name any names, but there was one in particular, the other side, an expert that was bizarre and comical, but yeah, I mean, there were some really funny moments, and of course some inside jokes that we all share.
I did the cross-examination. I wore all white. I wanted people to be looking at me. I didn't want them looking at Ms. Heard.
Wow.
I wanted them to look at me.
Wow, that's just incredible to see how there are so many things that go into it. So many, like, it's almost like the optics that are at play, the dynamics that are at play.
Jury see everything.
Yeah.
You realize that. They see everything. And it is theater. Everything from what you wear to how you interact with each other, with your client. I mean, it is all incredibly important. And you want it to come off genuine and natural, right? What you want is the jury, or the trier of fact, in this case it was a jury, to be looking at you and to be listening to your questions, because you're making your points in your questions. It almost doesn't matter what that witness says in response, because the question is actually where you're making the point and making the argument. And I realized at some point during the cross-examination of Ms. Heard that two of the jury members in that box actually turned away from her and like physically turned their backs to her and were just looking at me. And I thought to myself in that moment, we got them. Because now they're just paying attention to my questions. It almost didn't matter whether what she said, in response. And that's when you know you've got them. And I'm not a perfect person. I will make mistakes. I will take clients that I should not have, and I will, work on things that maybe I don't necessarily believe in as passionately. But at the end of the day, we take an oath, and that's to represent clients and to do that fiercely. And they expect us to do that for them. So it's an amazing career point where I'm at, but it comes with pros and cons. Social media played a role in what I think the role it played in that case. I try to remind people that social media, right, was responding to evidence. It was responding to the evidence we were presenting in that trial. Yes, some of it was funny. Some of it was, crude. Some of it was, bathroom humor or inappropriate language, but it was all evidence.
Excuse me?
Mr. Depp got you that role in Aquaman, didn't he?
No, Miss Vasquez, I got myself that role by auditioning.
Johnny Depp's attorney has publicly admitted that every single morning of the Amber Heard trial, she would have Johnny Depp's cologne sprayed in every single stall of the women's bathroom as a form of psychological warfare on Amber Heard. And people seem to think that this is inspiring.
This is shocking news. I'm shocked. This is shocking news. I'm shocked. This is shocking news.
Justin Bieber has often supported abusive men, so this isn't surprising.
Kind of do this thing again where he'd disappear and he'd come back. And I remember at first when he first started drinking, I didn't really think much of it, but all of a sudden the behavior kind of started to go in line with the disappearing, and he'd come back and he'd just be different. And I'd say something and he'd accuse me of saying something else or saying it in a different way, or he would, it was mostly my clothing at the time and me working. That was the main thing. Like, I found myself trying to not talk about auditions because it would change the mood so dramatically. I tried to, he would make these comments about, whoring myself out, but do so in the context of me acting, and he would talk about other actresses who do my role in this way where they were worthless whores, that they were fame hungry, expletive, just this. The point is, it felt really dirty to be an actor. Never mind that he was one. It was dirty that I wanted to do this job that I wanted to do, and I was doing the job of an actress. It was everything every time I was walking out of the house, he would ask me, "That's really what you're wearing, kid? Oh, I see." I wore a dress to an event once, and I felt beautiful in it. Like, stupid as that sounds, I felt pretty in this dress I picked out. And
Amber Heard is honestly an amazing human being who has done so much good for people. She stood up for people when almost no one stood up for her.
Look what happened to me when I came forward. Would you?
Hi, I'm Amber Heard. I'm an actor and an activist.
You have never been more powerful. We have never been more powerful than we are right now. In your hands is the power to change the world, and it's not hyperbole.
When anyone's human rights are denied, everyone's human rights are undermined. Standing shoulder to shoulder as women, we comprise a vast army of voices, and we can no longer accept silence. I will stand up. I will raise my voice. I will take action. I will use my right to stand up for your right.
Change starts at home. If you believe in this, stand up. Be the leader that you are looking for.
Thanks so much if you watched till this point. I'll see you in my next video. Here's a little outro specially prepared for Johnny.
I am positive that you are the most unattractive man I have ever met in my entire life. In the short time we've been together, you have demonstrated every loathsome characteristic of the male personality and even discovered a few new ones. You are physically repulsive, intellectually retarded, you're morally reprehensible, vulgar, insensitive, selfish, stupid, you have no taste, a lousy sense of humor, and you smell. You're not even interesting enough to make me sick.